Something was popping up over the past week on Polygon. How to get started in fighting games. It has a decent amount of viewership. Fighting games are pretty cool, but they can be intimidating to get into. You might look at the competitive world of Tekken or Street Fighter and think, I probably suck and don't have the right to the right gear and don't understand these words, but stop, you can get into fighting games. And for Pat Gill, the journey began was utterly rewarding. You're going to embrace fighting games and you can too. That sounds very similar to some shit that I've been spewing, this bullshit that comes out of my mouth for a very long time. Everyone's saying this video is pretty good. I'm curious how much this is different than some of the stuff that I say. This is a person's journey of getting into fighting games. All right, let me check this out. I'm curious to see, because like once again, from my perspective, I like seeing and really listening to people that aren't super into this stuff and why they are not into this stuff, right? Why they would either like to be and what are the things that are stopping them from getting into it. And that's why I kind of really enjoyed going over the IGN top 10 video, which is obviously somebody very versed in the fighting game scene and, you know, what's popular and what people like in general. And then you get the Watch Mojo top 10 video. And all these are like made by very big publication sites, by the way, like IGN and Polygon and Watch Mojo, right? I prefer not to like do it around some rando's top 10 list and just get insanely critical over some kid being like, how dare you put Mortal Kombat 11 in your top 3, you piece of shit. You know, I really don't want to do that. I feel like it's kind of interesting when you get these big publications that sort of do this. I think that's a bit different, right? I think that's, I don't want to criticize like you individuals. It's kind of interesting when you get big like journalism outlets or publications to do something like that, right? So it's funny to see how they balance their bias and their preferences and the overall perspective with what the hell is going on. So anyway, that's why we're watching this. I'm kind of really curious to see what somebody at Polygon, who obviously likes fighting games a lot, has gone through to get into them.
For a long time, I'd look at fighting games and I'd say, that looks so cool, but I don't think it's for me. I had done some casual button mashing, but I never dove into the deeper mechanics. When I saw the gulf between what I was able to do and what others were doing, I told myself there was no way I'd ever be able to get there.
This Tekken 2 cutscene.
A few years ago, I decided to try for real. Was it worth it? Yes. I can tell you without exaggeration that fighting games have brought me more joy than anything else I've put my gaming hours into.
God damn. Okay. Video's already spitting. Video is already spitting. Okay. He's right. It's the best genre of competitive games, if not genre of games there is. He's not wrong because of the satisfaction curve, right? Not every single game is going to be gold to every single person. But, you know, finding the game that you like and essentially making the connection is something that is unparalleled. So, you know, we have a very good intro here.
It's a distinct category of enjoyment unto itself, constructed from the greatest pleasures of gaming, the childlike joy of hitting buttons and seeing cool shit happen.
Hey, this guy gets it! This guy gets it! Wow, I don't know how many times I've actually used that term. Hold on a second, let's just go back.
The greatest pleasures of gaming, the childlike joy of hitting buttons and seeing cool shit happen.
Okay, sorry.
The slow burn tension of outmaneuvering an opponent in a strategy game, the Dark Souls satisfaction of studying a boss's patterns and exploiting their weaknesses. It's meditative, it's rhythmic, it's sports, it's therapeutic, it's communal. It's the closest you're ever going to come to feeling like Rocky or your favorite shonen protagonist. It's made me happier and it's made my brain feel better. It is absolutely worth it. But it takes a lot of work, and looking at that from the outside can be overwhelming.
And this is like, that's actually a great point, right? That it takes a lot of work. And it's unfair because in a position like mine, right, where we quite literally grew up with this, right? Like it wasn't like we approached it as a, I'll switch for the sake of, you know, posterity. It wasn't like we approached fighting games as this thing that we're going to get better at, you know? No, they were just there, right? It was a relatively new genre that was debuting when we were like at a young age, and we grew up alongside them. So for a lot of us, and I see a lot of people that are new and getting into fighting games, and they're trying to ask me, like, how do you learn how to fight against people? Like, how do you actually pick up on what people's habits are and then try to use that against them? Like, they're like, I just can't do that. And that is unfortunately something that I take for granted that just comes with time. It leaves me with the impression when I tell people of what the actual investment is to become actually good at a fighting game, especially if you're starting from scratch, is just that it takes a shit ton of time. And it then boils back to, like, if you're going to put a shit ton of time into something, then you better love the hell out of it. Once again, it's just another testament that, like, fighting games are no different, you know? And it's the same thing when it comes to some of the best players in the world, like Sonic Fox and Justin Wong. They're as good as they were because they grinded the holy hell out of them because they loved it. And that's just, then they took the natural process of becoming good at fighting games. Let's continue.
And intimidating. This guide is for people who have been studying that water and thinking about jumping in. Hopefully, you can use this video as a gentle, supportive push into the pool. Here's my 10-step guide for getting into fighting games without losing your mind.
And this is once again another great point of, like, a step-by-step guide to sort of, like, let people know, like, all the different things you're going to run into on the way. And for me, the way I like to approach this situation is instead to be, like, really direct about it, to be way more broad. If you don't shoot people in the direction of direct like lessons, right? Like a curriculum of what you have to do to be good at fighting games. Because once again, that might not work, and you spend all this time and it just doesn't work out. You don't get any better. That happens all the damn time, dude. Some people just don't fit. Some people just brains don't work in that way. If you instead approach it in the way, find something about a fighting game that you love, right? And that's been my thing that I've learned about people and the way people work for a long time, of, like, why fighting games that have terrible online still have giant communities and people that love it. And it's because they found something they love in the game, whether or not it was the content in the game or characters or stages or graphics or things like that, that they'll just sit and play it forever. So I want to see what this list says and what is the best approach for some of this stuff. And if I agree or disagree with, like, 30 years of experience or whatever.
Step 1. Decide you want to do it.
This one's kind of obvious, but it's also essential. Your desire to get into fighting games is going to be the thing that fuels you through the hard stuff. If you're fighting game curious, but you're not sure if you're ready to take the dive, there is some other stuff you can do to gradually expose yourself. For starters, watch some matches.
Activates reversal. He wasn't looking.
It's really exciting to see the top players just going nuts.
If cool shit's happening in a game and you think it looks cool, and you got characters that you think look awesome when they do it, you already have a reason. You now have, like, good reason number one, you know?
Here are some of my favorites. Goichi versus Sonic Fox at EVO 2018 rules. It's like an unstoppable force versus an immovable object.
Playing them right now, thank you.
Goichi's defense is like
Jesus, season 1 Dragon Ball. Oh my
Sonic
god.
Fox's offense is just relentless.
Oh my god.
That Sonic Fox is
I'm looking forward to playing this game again.
As they get an
with rollback that
so
code.
Every mix-up is just so tense.
Oh, that Little Majin's run.
Lil Majin's whole EVO 2018 run was also great.
Jesus, that elbow.
Majin was an American player in a game that was historically dominated by Korean and Japanese players. So it's a combination of an underdog.
I don't think I've seen this
with
in
the
full.
home field advantage. Plus, he's playing a
He
super
has the
fun
straight, like,
character with
Mentos
big
smile.
splashy
Like,
moves. But it's not just about what the players are doing. Hearing the audience and commentators get excited and pop off for the big moments will help you figure out what's important and what to pay attention to.
And he's so scared of getting hit because he's got that V-trigger. No, it's gonna hit here into the critical arc. Textbook.
If you're in the mood to chill and watch some super thoughtful, accessible video essays about the underlying mechanics and philosophies
Core
of
A
fighting
Gaming,
games,
please.
pop on Gerald Lee, aka
There we go.
Core A Gaming. My personal favorite is why button mashing doesn't work. Also, follow some fighting game people on Twitter and Twitch and stuff. There's a lot of people doing really interesting streams and posting funny clips that are going to make you want to play.
whose idea was it to make his pubes his legs?
We hear them.
I disagree with that clip usage.
Man's trying to deck you with the refrigerator. You thought this, but he unplugged that shit off the wall. Let's get money.
There will be a lot of in-jokes and terminology you don't understand, but you'll pick it up soon enough through context clues. And if you need a helping hand, check out the infill.net fighting game glossary. They have
Exclamation point
explanations of
glossary
all the
chat.
jargon.
Step 2. Pick a game.
And this is where this step is interesting. Yeah, this is usually where I boil down the conversation to pick a game that's new, right? Like find something to ease your way into something. You need to find a fighting game that is new, that has a relative large amount of people playing at the start. Because it allows your ability to ease into the transition of learning the game a lot more, a lot less cumbersome. Because if you're jumping into an old fighting game that's been around for some time, like for example, if I jump into play any rank of Tekken 7, I'm going to get my ass blasted out, and it's going to take me a few days to understand what the hell's going on in the game again, which I'm kind of ready for. But there needs to be that understanding. Like you can't. Fighting games are a niche genre. You're not going to necessarily be able to jump in and have 30,000 people to play with at any given point unless you're playing multiverses.
A frequently asked question among the fighting game curious is, what's a good fighting game for a new player? And the definitive answer is literally whichever game you're interested in.
Good answer. Good answer. Yep.
I'm so serious about this. You need to follow your heart. Look at
Goddamn, good answer. Shit. Getting some thought-provoking content out of Polygon and IGN over the past week? What the fuck is going on?
gameplay trailers, watch some big matches. Whichever game makes you feel the spark is the one that you should chase. That spark will be what fuels you when things get hard. I love martial arts cinema and pro wrestling, so for me, the game that grabbed my attention was Tekken. The pace of animation is a bit slower than the stuff in 2D fighters like Street Fighter or Guilty Gear, so it was kind of like watching a choreographed fight scene from the movies and wrestling I love. Before I understood mid-low mix-ups and frame data, I understood that King did a sick running powerbomb and I loved to see it. You gotta find your
Powerbombs through the floor.
You like anime? You like nasty gore? You like ponies? Get it. But while you're following your heart, you do need to pay attention to one annoying wrinkle. Because of the old COVID, you're mostly going to be playing online, and not all games have great net play. In games that use delay-based netcode, response times can be sluggish. The good news is that if you're new, you probably won't know what you're missing out on until you taste that crisp offline stuff. If you know that you're mostly going to be playing online, consider choosing a game with rollback netcode. Rollback is an ingenious net play solution that pretty much eliminates the sluggishness inherent to online fighting games. If you want a cool explainer on how it works, check out this video by Core A Game.
Oh, so good.
Here are some games with pretty good netcode. If you're
I was about to spit out my coffee at Dragon Ball, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right, that's changing.
not sure if a game has rollback, just Google it, and you'll either find a bunch of blog posts like Punch Kicker adds rollback, or a bunch of Reddit threads like, how come Punch Kicker doesn't have rollback?
Step 3, gearing up.
Another common question is, what do I need to start playing fighting games? And the good news is, if you play other types of games, you're good to go. You need a console or a PC and a controller, and that's it.
Fight.
Also, a good internet connection. More on that later. You might think you need a big fancy fight stick.
I mean, and to be completely honest, you don't even really need a good internet connection. You can have like 1 meg up, 1 meg down, and play fighting games just fine online, you know? The amount of data transfer that happens with like a fighting game is extremely small, especially if it's peer-to-peer like rollback netcode. And that's the nice thing, is that rollback netcode can actually fix some of those issues where if you do have some crazy packet loss that happens for like a frame or two, which happens a lot of the time, rollback netcode can actually help with that.
But there's really no direct correlation between performance and equipment. Lots of the best players in the world grew up using readily available console controllers and still absolutely kill with them. And the skills and knowledge you develop using one type of controller are totally transferable. There's just a short recalibration period where you need to develop some new muscle memory. That said, if you have the resources and the inclination, fight sticks can be a lot of fun.
Yep. And I say the same thing all the time, that fight sticks don't give you a statistical advantage, like a scientific advantage in any way, especially for the current fighting games. They really don't. They're mostly there for legacy because they're fun, right? They're They're actually enjoyable to use, and they're really one of the underused aspects of fighting games now. Hitbox is different. Hitbox actually can give you an advantage if you want to spend the time to get good at it because of its precise ass inputs.
They're tactile and hefty, and they make good noises. So let's talk about them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I like fight sticks the most still to this day, not just for the legacy aspect, because that's a big one, right? You're pretty much preserving arcade legacy with a fight stick. That's really what it is.
Most of the sticks you'll find are ball-top square gate, meaning the joystick moves around in a square frame. It makes it easy to lock in important fighting game positions like down back. You can just physically feel it. Another less common configuration is bat-top K-lever. These ones don't have a gate, and they use a rubber grommet to return to the neutral position. The result is that they're a bit spongier, and you gotta be more precise with your inputs. Unless you're planning to go all in on Tekken or you grew up on these, I'd steer clear for now. Finally, Hitbox-style controllers replace the joystick with more arcade buttons. They take some getting used to, but they allow for extremely precise inputs. But maybe the biggest benefit is that they're pretty damn ergonomic. Cranking on a fight stick can stress out your shoulders and fingers. My elderly thumbs don't have what it takes to mash on a D-pad anymore. A hitbox is comfy, and it lets you nail your inputs without straining. Most controllers work with PC and one type of console. If you ever plan on attending a local event, I'd suggest going for a controller that will work with the PS4. That's what they're going to be using there. Tuning your control setup is fun, and it can become a hobby of its own.
What's funny is that wasn't the case for a long time. It is now, just because Xbox is no longer the de facto version to play most fighting games on. But for the previous generation, I'm sorry, that was 2 generations ago. Fuck. For the Street Fighter 4 era, the universal way to play the Street Fighter 4 and any games like that was actually the Xbox 360 version. PlayStation 3 version had severe issues on almost every single fighting game that came out that was a game that came out on Xbox to PlayStation. So a couple generations ago, everybody was actually playing on Xbox.
But the biggest message I want to give you is do not gear gate yourself. Don't put an artificial boundary between you and the thing you want to do. You're just denying yourself the pleasure of playing and getting better.
This is what, it's a very good point as well, where if somebody says like, I want to get good at fighting games, which fight stick should I get? I'm like, whoa. You've never used fight stick before. No, but I want to get good at fighting games. I'm like, you know how to use a controller, right? Of course. And you're telling me you're not good at fighting games with a controller? No, that's what's holding me back. Ah, okay. So now we're going to have a different conversation.
But let's talk about a real boundary.
Step 4. Pipe check.
If your connection to your opponent is not steady, you're simply not going to have a nice time playing with each other. You'll be more likely to biff your execution, but more importantly, it'll just be sluggish and jittery. So most of the online fighting game community adhere religiously to the Ethernet cable, because direct wiring takes a big failure point out of the networking pipeline. The anti-Wi-Fi sentiment online is severe enough that it will affect your experience. Lots of games have Wi-Fi indicators, and opponents are less likely to accept a match with you if they're worried that you'll have a dodgy connection. That means you should get wired up. When I had roommates, I would run cable down my hallway when I was playing and then coil it up when I was done, so our common spaces weren't a constant tripping hazard. This might involve some negotiation and compromise, but it's absolutely worth it.
Step 5. Choose your fighter.
He's right.
So, who are some good characters for new fighting game players? The answer, regardless of the game,
is
whoever you think looks cool. Once again, your enthusiasm is going to be the emotional well from which you draw the motivation to grind out combos and do the difficult work of learning.
So the nice thing, Chad, is that I feel like I'm just being validated right now. You know? I feel like at least some people get it. This is the shit that we've been preaching for like, I don't even know how many years it's been. I've been doing this for way too long. This person went through the process. They found the character they liked. They found the thing that they enjoyed, and now they're in love. That's honestly the thing that I've been preaching forever. And it's one of the things that I get constantly spoken to about from people that get into fighting games. Honestly, my biggest goal is just to get you to understand and find things that you love about this franchise or series or genre. And now you just have some amazing thing that you really love to do and play, and you're really good at it. And that feels good to be good at something. So it's just nice to see that from some other front, right? That isn't just me preaching this shit, that like I'm not just talking out of my ass. Like this is how people like eventually get to the point where you're dedicated, right? And you're really enjoying this shit. And this person pretty much went through that same process.
And you don't always have to pick the Ryu of the game to learn the fundamentals. For example, when I started Tekken 7, I played King, because I liked that he was a huge kitty cat man who did all my favorite wrestling moves. He's a great character, but he also has a big, bloated moveset that he's picked up over decades of Tekken games. He's got some complicated inputs, and as a grappler, he approaches combat differently from most of the roster. But I liked him. I liked the way his moves looked. I liked his vibe.
Yep.
So I had the motivation to put in the work.
And this also boils back to an old conversation I had, why we don't need to nerf fighting games for new players. You don't. Even if it's hard and insanely daunting, like that 200 plus move list on King, it didn't matter.
Later, when I picked up Guilty Gear Strive, I went with Soul Bad Guy, because he's kind of the Ryu of that game, and he was really strong at the time. I thought that having a high-tier character who exemplified the fundamentals of that series would help me learn. So I tried for a while, and then I fell off and told myself maybe Guilty Gear wasn't for me. A few months later, I came back and I tried the character who I really wanted to play all along, and it all clicked.
Potemkin.
I loved looking at my little guy.
Yeah. Clearly this person loves like big wrestling moves and grappler stuff.
Loved his gigantic hands and his booty drop. And I love busting. So I was motivated to play and learn. Don't let tier lists or meta discussions dissuade you early on. Pick who you think looks cool. I literally cannot say this enough.
I like this video.
Learn how to play.
Once you've selected your little guy, hop into training mode and start hitting buttons. See what they do. See how it feels. Some games like Guilty Gear Strive and Mortal Kombat have decent tutorials that explain fighting game fundamentals and include challenges to test your knowledge. Any fighting game worth playing will also have a full command list in the start menu. If you like what you're feeling, hop onto YouTube and search for some character guides. This is a really cool thing about fighting games. They are complicated. There are hurdles to overcome. But that complexity is also what makes them so satisfying. And
like this was actually a very important thing for me when new Tekken characters were coming out, where some people would make quick guides, right? Of like, okay, what is this character's like 15 best moves? Because Tekken's a game that can be really difficult to learn how to play, and it's got a lot of shit to deal with at any given time. So a quick guide would just be like, okay, so here's your good mids, here's your low, here's your launcher, here's the stuff that you want to do. This launcher's trash, don't use it. And there would be a ton of like really good resources when the first week a character came out for Tekken that was like, oh, I'm just going to use all this stuff, and then I'm just naturally going to learn the other moves as I play the game and figure shit out.
fun to play. And people want other people to share in that fun, so they'll put in hours and hours and hours of work to make wonderful guides. Like and subscribe. Character guides are great. Looking at your move list in a game is helpful, but it doesn't instruct you on the overall strategy for that character. A good guide will highlight the most important tools your character has and how to use those tools to win. When you watch a guide, don't expect to internalize everything all at once. That's a ton of information and it's just not realistic. I've watched the same guides over and over again over the course of weeks, months, and even years. Every time I rewatch, I'll notice the things that I've learned and incorporated into my play, and I'll make note of the things that I still need to do. In terms of written resources, that's going to depend on the game you're playing. Guilty Gear and other ArcSys games have comprehensive guides on dustloop.com. A lot of Tekken info is in Google spreadsheets that get passed around on Reddit. Figuring out where your game lives online is just a matter of Googling. As you watch and read, hop into training mode and work on a few bread and butter combos. Don't worry about optimizing yet. You need to develop your muscle memory to the point where you can hit your combos.
Yeah, and this I was about to say, and I wonder if he's going to say it too. The very basic understanding that what you practice in training mode does not directly translate to actual matches. And especially in training mode, most of the time when you start a game, you want to do the stuff that's fun, which is combos, and that's fine, right? That's the way I approach most fighting games because of an entertainment aspect, to learn some cool combos so that you can eventually land them. But when you land those launchers, you land those counter hit setups, you land all those things like in a Tekken situation, is your brain going to make the mind to muscle connection of, oh, that happened, now I need to go to this combo that I practiced and I did 10 times in a row and I'm really good at? completely different skill set. Honestly, like fighting game geniuses will just be able to do that shit no problem. 99.99999% majority will not. So that is not something to worry about. That is something that everybody goes through, that you just need to eventually execute the stuff that you practice in actual matches.
At all. A few days after I picked up Tekken, I got on Twitter and posted a video of me hitting King's most basic, unoptimized combo. I did it, I might have said, and a passing commenter might have asked, did what? This will be a pattern that repeats over your time in fighting games. You're going to put a lot of effort into mastering things that to outsiders appear inconsequential and to experts insignificant. But that doesn't mean it's not an accomplishment. Good job. But nailing combos only accounts for a tiny, tiny percentage of what goes into playing a match. And the only way to start figuring that out is to fight.
Yeah, you just got to play.
7, fight.
Yeah, like, and this is the thing where it's like, how do I get good at this game, right? How do I, like, you know, learn how to play it? You just got to play it. Like anything, you're just going to have to go in and you have to see what all these other characters do, see what your character does, what usually works, what doesn't work. And the problem is that not everyone has that mental capacity when it comes to certain games, right? I know several people throughout my life that are pretty good at fighting games, but they won't get past a certain space just because they'll learn some things and just apply the some things they learned and never actually get any better, you know? They won't apply any new things to essentially reaching new plateaus and stuff, and just be completely okay with being at this, like, this attitude level of just knowing this couple of things, and then I can just jump in and play and apply these couple of things. And guess what? That's completely fine. That is completely fine. A lot of people are like that, and you don't really need to elevate yourself to all these like crazy like levels and shit. That's completely fine. And for me, it's like it happens, and I ultimately have to ask myself for a lot of these games, am I frustrated, right? Is there outside factors of the fighting game that I'm playing that make me not want to continue this path, you know? And unfortunately, for a lot of fighting games that I've played and covered over the past many years, yes, there would be several aspects of fighting games that just frustrate the shit out of me, completely unrelated to the actual fighting itself, which is why this genre is still sort of stuck in this weird spot that it is, because all these outside factors between matchmaking and rollback netcode or funky online or shitty lobbies or a non-existent ranked, like all this kind of shit can be really challenging, much less to the entire population of the game dropping off the face of the earth like DNF fucking Duel. If I could still keep running into people as I'm trying to get my legend rank up, but the problem is I can't. I'm going to get like the same 2 or 3 people, and that's demotivating as shit. Yeah, fighting is important. Just getting into a game and learning how to play it and just throwing matches at your face is really important. And it's one of the things that gets you beyond that hurdle, right? That hurdle of like, oh, I kind of know how to play this game, to actually being really good at it.
A human.
Sitting here on this screen for the first time can be scary. I mean, maybe not for you, maybe you're some sort of real fucking cool guy. But for me, not knowing what would happen when I hit that matchmaker
That was a great place to drop the F-bomb.
button was nerve-wracking. Another real human being is about to see you fumble around with your buttons and drop your combos and forget to block in real time. But it's okay. It'll be fine. As intimidating as that human-to-human connection is.
This is actually a great point, right? This is why I think like streamer mode for some fighting games would be good. I think it would actually be very beneficial if it just randomized your name or something like that when you were playing online, and you get the choice of whether or not you get the ability to have your information displayed. It would be nice just to be relatively anonymous for a little bit, and I can sort of sympathize in some situations how new players, especially non-practiced players, would just like to jump in and learn shit, you know? So I kind of sympathize with this a lot.
It's also absolutely core to the joy of fighting games. Now, I'm not saying there's no value to fighting the CPU. It is a good way to keep learning your own character's moveset and develop muscle memory. It can also help you familiarize yourself with the capabilities of other characters. You can learn that Sagat has this big kick and this uppercut and, whoa, 2 different fireballs. But once you've mentally logged that stuff, there's not much more it can do to prepare you for fighting a real person.
Unfortunately,
Despite
true.
advances in fighting game AI, the CPU won't string those moves together like a human opponent, and fighting a robot is just not as fun. So take a deep breath, set your expectations low, and hit that matchmaking button. or one of those matchmaking buttons. Most fighting games are going to have a couple of options, so let's go over those. Ranked matchmaking tracks your performance and skill using a bunch of different metrics, then attempts to match you against opponents of the same skill level. Usually there's some sort of meta progression here, as you earn new titles or badges, or in the case of Strive, literally move towards the top of a tower. The obvious pro here is that as a new player, you should be paired up with other new players, so you'll actually have a chance of winning, and winning feels good. The con is that even when you're fighting for fake online points, that sense that you're being evaluated changes everything. Getting bumped down a level after a losing streak can be really demoralizing. It also changes the behavior of your opponents.
Still haven't transcended humanity, huh? You lack discipline.
Separating your self-worth from your performance can be tough, and it makes some people act really silly. It can cause people to get obsessive about their win rates. They might duck you in matchmaking if you play a character that they have a hard time against. They might bail out of a set the moment they lose. They might send you nasty messages. Quick tip on
What is this, Tekken 5? I can't remember.
have a hard time against. They might bail out of a set the moment they lose.
Is this Forest Laws?
They might send you nasty messages.
Oh! I think that's the Tekken 5 ending, yeah.
Quick tip on this if you're worried about getting shit from toxic players, lock down your message settings ahead of time. Now I know I just listed a lot of cons that make ranked sound like shit, but it's actually fine.
I mean, he's not wrong. It's not like the ranked matchmaking in a lot of these games are making it any easier. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we still have of fighting games between like matchmaking and stuff is the fact that ranked matchmaking still kind of works exactly the same as it did when Street Fighter 4 came out. The only difference is that rematching options are now here, and we don't have to like queue up again for like a 1st to 1, and that's it. That's about like the best quality of life that we got for online fighting games in terms of like ranked and stuff. You get to play again if you choose to, if you both choose to, and that's about it. Obviously, and we've talked about it for many years, a lot that can be done to get people to fight each other easier and faster.
The other option is unranked. Here, the matchmaking will just stick you with another player. Any other player. Or you'll meet up in some sort of virtual arcade setting. Unlike ranked play, there's no digital clout on the line, so people are much more likely to play long sets. That's a good thing. In fighting games, even at the highest level of play, there's always an adjustment period between opponents. Pro players have the knowledge and experience to tune up quickly, but for beginners it takes longer. Let's say your opponent is using a technique that keeps blowing you up. You might not have time to run to a website and look up the frame data, but in a long set, you do have more opportunities to rummage through your toolkit and try to find something that'll solve your problem. And if you find a solution, you have the chance to test it out repeatedly and start burning it into your muscle memory. The most obvious downside to unranked matchmaking is that you might get paired up with somebody who is way, way better than you. But that's not really a downside in my opinion. Losing 20 matches to a very experienced player is a great way to learn. You learn which of your reliable strategies aren't really viable against better players, and you get to see the strength of good fundamentals. And you'll see something that you are very unlikely to see in the beginner ranks: the power of not pressing buttons. When I started playing unranked Tekken, I would fight opponents who felt like absolute brick walls. They would just block punish, and whiff punish. Every loss was the result of me overextending and using unsafe options. So I tried to emulate their style, and gradually I got better. I still love hitting buttons though. Anyways, both ranked and unranked are valuable. If you stop having fun with one, try the other for a bit. And on the topic of having fun,
Stepping. Struggle.
Struggle.
You lose.
Isn't it past your bedtime?
at the end of a fighting game match, you win or you lose. There's no teammates to blame for not pulling their weight. There's no XP meter sliding up to reward you for your participation. You will, beyond a shadow of a doubt,
Which there should be.
Pulling their weight.
Let's
There's
just
no
say that.
XP meter sliding up to reward you for your participation.
There should be. Let's just say that the fact that that isn't the way, the fact that you're not getting reward just for playing, there should be a reason, even if you're losing, to like level up your characters and shit, to level up a battle pass or some bullshit, right? I mean, there's a reason why so many fucking people are playing multiverses right now, and it's because they are getting rewarded for losing. They're not rewarded even more so for winning? Clearly not. No, you get way more for winning. But the fact that there is something happening, even if you apply your effort to something, is good. Because even if you lose, do you think that information is valueless? No. Should you just be punished for attempting to fight somebody that is way better than you? I don't think so.
You will, beyond a shadow of a doubt, lose a lot. Self-doubt and frustration can feel overwhelming when you're in the thick of it.
I mean, just to add to the subject, I think a lot of people come from a super boomer attitude where not everyone sees so many different perspectives of fighting games like I do, and they're still stuck in this like FGC bubble where it's like you getting the opportunity to lose to somebody that's much better than you is where the value is. Of getting your ass beat is essentially like a very much arcade mentality. You're gonna have to just put the money back in the machine until you eventually win type shit, right? And yeah, I get it. Like that's the way it was. That's the way anybody that was in the 90s or the early 2000s, that's the way you grew up learning fighting games. Because guess what? There was no other options, motherfucker. Like now there's a billion other options of things to play and things to do that give you all these different aspects for you to play the game in a variety of casual ways and reward you for even not fucking playing the game. Fighting games have not fucking changed. Like things are just, everything else is changing. Fighting games just aren't, right? The thing that's getting better is that our shit finally actually works online. Oh, thank God, right? Thank God they're actually functioning now over the past couple of years. That's nice. But still, we're in a situation that everything is still mimicking the classic arcade mentality. You just get stronger and better. That is your reward. Your reward is brownie points. Your reward is that you get to brag. How about we just actually give tangible in-game rewards for things? And I think that should be actually a part of fighting games moving forward. And guess what? That's a thing that like free-to-play games kind of have to do already, which is why free-to-play tends to feel like it would work very well with the fighting game genre in general. I don't know.
But it is all a part of the process of getting better. So here are a few tips for
good luck breaking that shit.
Separate your self-worth from your performance. Okay, I know this is kind of like saying stop being mentally ill, but it still needs to be said. You are not your win-loss ratio. Getting demoted doesn't mean you suck as a person, even if it feels that way. And if you start feeling that way, it's time to take a damn break. Taking a break doesn't just let you cool off, it makes you better.
And here's like the reality that what this person is saying is completely true, right? This stuff is absolutely and completely true. But the reality of the situation is that's the drop-off point. That's where you lose your players. And I think that there needs to be things to be done in fighting game online matchmaking that should try to alleviate that situation. There should be active effort put into this person is struggling a lot. What can we do for them so that they don't just fucking stop? How do we matchmake them in some ways that might give them a chance against like other players? Does our game even have the population for that shit, you know?
When your hands are off the joystick and you're doing something else, your brain keeps gently churning on those situations, looking for the solutions that you couldn't find in the heat of the moment. Your body is rewiring neuron pathways to make your execution smoother and better. Playing fighting games feels a bit more like a traditional skill-based hobby like playing guitar.
Yes. And that's daunting for a lot of people because it takes so much fucking time. And you're not wrong. It's the reality of the situation. This is why whenever I get the question, how do I get good at fighting games really fast? Well, I'll tell you how to get good at fighting games. The really fast part isn't going to happen. How much better do you actually want to get? Are you trying to beat your little brother? Are you trying to beat somebody at like a family event? Are you trying to win, you know, like go to a game night with your friends? Or are you actually wanting to get better? If it's any of those previous ones I mentioned, I'm going to say pick Ken because he has the flaming Shoryuken that's invincible and no one's going to be able to fucking stop you. You're going to find something that is absolutely a, what's quote unquote, a scrub killer move. And if you want to beat your little brother or go to a game night and win some local between just you and your friends, yeah, you're going to win. And guess what? No one else is going to like you. That's the reality of the situation. You're going to win, and you're going to learn that nobody will respect your skill. That happens anyway, even at the highest level of fighting games, right? Which is why it's a deep personal journey. Even if you are the best at fighting games, even if you are in any competitive element, you're going to get every single other person saying they don't deserve it. They actually suck. They got an easy bracket. Everyone's going to do their best to like disenfranchise you from your accomplishments. That just is a natural fucking thing in the world. You have to figure out what you want out of this situation situation. You have to figure out what is your personal goal, because if you're out there to impress others with you being like good at fighting games, in most situations where it's like you're not a fucking entertainer like me or something like that, you're going to lead yourself to, I don't want to play you in this anymore. You know, I don't like playing you in these things anymore.
There's a base level of effort and self-direction. You need to get enjoyment out of it. That means that you won't always have the mental energy to do it. And that's okay, don't force it. A break from fighting games can be a couple hours or a couple months. The games will still be there when you get back, and your body will remember what to do. Watch replays. God, this one is so hard. It's like hearing your voice in a recording or seeing yourself on video. Do I really do that? You do, but it's so valuable and you can't neglect it. Most fighting games keep a log of your most recent matches with the ability to play them back. You should take advantage of that. Seeing yourself play can help you recognize habits that you want to correct. It can also help you appreciate what you do well and what you want to do more of. And when you're feeling really brave, take the next step. Show your gameplay to someone else and ask them for tips. But before you can do that, first you need...
Step 9. Community and competition.
Oh yeah.
This can be one of the greatest joys of fighting games. The fighting game community is the name of the collective, but it's not monolithic. There are hundreds or thousands of Discord communities out there for fighting games. Some are game specific, some are character specific, some are geared towards certain demographics and skill levels. Do some Googling and ask around on Twitter until you find a place that feels good for you. Whether it's folks you meet through these communities or your own network of friends, playing fighting games against someone you know is so good. For me, knowing who's on the other side of the connection completely obliterates the frustration and antagonism that I can feel playing against random online opponents. Partially because it's just more humanizing when you know that person, but also because you can ask questions and chat. If you're in a good community, your opponent isn't going to keep any secrets. Because people who've decided that they want to get good at fighting games have signed an unspoken contract of mutual self-improvement. Iron sharpens iron. Fighting stronger opponents makes you stronger. So a good sparring partner will explain exactly how and why
It's
they
second
win,
tag.
until it's time to compete.
Very well then. Far be it from me to turn down a challenge. And for a fellow pugilist.
Through your community or just by being online, you might come across some online tournaments, and you should sign up for them. Tournaments are really cool. They offer you the chance to do a lot of things that you won't get in your casual play. First of all, it's one of the few times you and your buddies will step into that magic circle of competition, mutually and temporarily agreeing to set aside the helpful hints and just going all out, seeing who will win. If you're used to mostly playing friendlies, it's fun to try out a different vibe.
Some of these Tekken
The other useful
cutscenes from
thing
like
is that it's
6 and
fucking
5 are
scary.
great.
At first. The first few times I did online tournaments, I literally got shaky and sweaty. I forgot my combos and I mashed buttons. But each time I did it, it got easier. And once you've played under pressure, you'll be better in casual settings. Random matchmaking doesn't get my heart rate up like it used to. Finally, a lot of tournaments are streamed on Twitch, which means you might get a chance to rewatch the VOD and hear someone commentate your match. Like a lot of parts of the fighting game process, this can make you feel vulnerable, but a good commentator will put into clear terms what's going on, and that can be an incredible learning tool.
They've proven they're pretty good at fighting out of the corner. Already, Doubleman now back thrown into the corner. Again, huge life deficit, but the other way around. Gets hit by the stomps. No, but drops it at the target combo.
Step 10. There is no end.
One of the many wonderful and intimidating things about fighting games is that there's no prescribed end goal for your participation. There's no final boss or end game treadmill. Even the best player in the world is only the best until someone surpasses them. No matter where you are in your journey, in some sense, you're still at the beginning. That means you won't always know the next step forward, but it also means you're never falling behind. And as long as you're on that path, learning and having fun, you're doing it right.
Yeah, that was a great video. I mean, I think there was some things that is like a harsh reality of the situation that I just personally, have to say that, I agree with what you're saying, but like, it isn't the player's fault, right? It's essentially like our responsibility to change the way we think about this because the games aren't helping us. Instead, I feel like, especially in my situation, we should do whatever we can to change the game, right? Because this shouldn't be this way. This is, in all honesty, unacceptable that it can be so difficult to get this stuff done. That this should be a fun process, and it's just not. And luckily, like, a lot of the efforts that myself and other community members and people have done have allowed for games to have good online and rollback netcode and all these things that we've been complaining about for 10 fucking years to eventually start happening. Eventually, like, you bitch enough about something, and it isn't just fruitful bitching. I'm not sitting here just complaining that Nago Ryuki is a god and this character takes no skill or some stupid shit like that. No, this is about, like, for the health of the genre and the game, for growing the community, because we have to understand that as a genre of anything, you're going to lose your player base, right? You naturally lose your player base with any individual fighting game going into the next one. And it really depends if the next ones come out that you're able to replace that player base with new people and give new people a chance to find something that they love about it, right? Which is why, like, I don't spend a lot of my time really complaining too much about some of those elements. I'll have my personal gripes that I don't think fighting games should be nerfed and stuff like that, but it's more like, well, let's improve the stuff that is actually detrimental to the genre, like these horseshit lobbies, right? The fact that we're spending so much time not fighting each other. So I agree with so many points in here when it comes to the actual learning process of fighting games. And this is an insanely good video because this comes from somebody that went through the process over the span of what feels like a couple of years, and then discovered a very similar process that I've been explaining for a hell of a long time. Like I feel like I've been making videos on this since 2013, 2014 about how characters are the things that start you on your journey, right? You find the characters you love and you'll just love a fighting game regardless if it's total shit online or otherwise. I think this video is fantastic. I think it's really great, and it's important to understand that those are the things that will get you into fighting games, right? Finding cool shit to do with the characters that you love in a game that you love.